Wait, I had a video up. Something about Amaranth's husband or something. What did I miss?
Oh,
that Amaranth's husband scheduled a star or something and she fought him or something. Am I? Oh wait, it was this clip. Oh, that's why it didn't work, because your clip doesn't work, but you keep linking the same Twitter thing, even though it's a dead link. Good one. Oh, don't worry, I fixed it because I'm a god, an actual hacker, a master hacker. Amaranth's husband charges at her again after she exposes live on stream that he spent her money on escorts, one of them named Octavia Red. Am I supposed to be able to hear this? Wait! What? Why is this... Why is the audio so weird on this? Okay. I think she's recording the stream with her phone.
yeah, wait, dude, an hour ago. If you guys don't know, there's this big, beautiful bill going through the House from Donald Trump, which is supposed to save America and buy a bunch of things and be great. Well, it turns out it adds like 5.2 trillion to the U.S. deficit and blows out our spending. It has extended and increased tax cuts. And so it got blocked. It got blocked by Republicans. Basically, a good number of fiscal conservatives said, hey, this is crazy. Especially because, you know, if you time the bill, it's like all the extra spending and the tax cuts happens right now, but the so-called cost savings don't kick in until after Trump's term. So anything that would like actually be a hard choice happens to someone else. And all the easy money happens right now. And so it's kind of, you know, I mean, it's a dog shit bill, to be honest. It's like a total fiscally irresponsible bill. And it got blocked. It got Republicans voted against it and stopped it, which is why Trump tweeted out that a bunch of grandstanding Republicans were trying to get in the way of his big, beautiful bill. But also at the exact same time as this spending argument is going on, Moody's, which is a credit ratings agency, just downgraded U.S. credit from AAA to AA1, which puts us not in the top tier of countries for likelihood of repaying our debt, which is now over $36 trillion. And again, Moody's, one of the people that were responsible for the financial crisis in 2008, because they're so low to downgrade anything. Moody's downgrade of America's debt is saying we can no longer wait to address the debt crisis. We do not believe that material multi-year reductions in mandatory spending and deficits will result from current fiscal proposal under consideration. Basically saying the current bill is stupid. The idea is they're just looking pretty rationally at the fact that we have an insane amount of debt, and all proposals are, hey, let's cut taxes. Let's cut taxes and increase spending. I mean, this is what I'm talking about when I say we're having like a Liz Truss type moment in America. It no longer makes sense. And we're already spending $1 out of every $5 we raise in taxes on interest spending to our previous debt. We're at the end of the cycle here, dude. Our debt interest servicing is about to be bigger than the military. We're already in such a bad spot. Now, listen, nobody is advocating that we have enough money to actually pay down our debt. Unfortunately, it's too big. But a reasonable solution is to balance our budget and then grow GDP so that the debt becomes less large as a percentage of what we make. But we're not doing that. We are cutting taxes, increasing spending, blowing it all out, leaving it all to die, basically. I mean, it's just a big party when you're already out of money. So I'm glad it got blocked. I mean, I assume he's going to put a lot of leverage and power down and try and get it forced through. Again, many Republicans are afraid to oppose him because he can get them primaried. So I don't know what'll happen, but I do know that this Moody's thing is like a signal. And the second this happened, which is today, U.S. borrowing costs rose. Because at the end of the day, you know, if you're going to loan money to a country, most people, big pension funds, big banks, they want to loan it to AAA. They want to loan it to the safest places. If America's not there because there's more risk, that's great. You know, you have to offer higher and higher returns to be able to invest in you. What would you say to people who say that increasing income tax on richer people will be passed on to the consumer through tax incidents? You're saying if we tax rich people, they'll raise prices on things? Or what are you trying to say? I don't understand what you're trying to say. I'm not trying to denigrate it. Tax incentives? I guess I can zoom out your question a little bit while you're figuring that out. No, I disagree entirely. Again, I think the most prosperous era in American history is 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Talking point. That 30-year window, we had way higher top tax rates. We had balanced budgets. We had, you know what I'm saying? And companies still grew. They were still world class. We had more exports. It's certainly not impossible. And so I would disagree with you just on principle. But also, you know, a big part of it is just tax enforcement. So a big thing, you know, with this is Elon Musk and Doge was supposed to be like, we're gonna help the deficit. So that way we can afford these tax cuts. The idea was like tariffs plus Doge would allow us to afford these tax cuts. But Doge has done nothing, really, except for cut the IRS, which means we can't raise our current taxes. And then tariffs are being unwound because they've been a catastrophic economic policy. Like the tariffs are being unwound and backpedaled left and right because they're not working. So, and the amount the 10% tariff will raise is very minuscule. So I don't know. I would just say like this is a big problem and it's starting to hit. Like these credit downgrades are assigned to all investors globally that U.S. assets are riskier. Again, AAA rated countries include like, you know, Swiss bonds, French bonds, German bonds, Japanese bonds are AAA. All these countries are now at a higher credit rating And so we have to offer even more interest to get people to invest in our bonds. Which countries are AAA rated? You can see it right here, dude. We just got downgraded, so we're not here anymore. We've already been downgraded by the S&P. Now it's going to be Moody's as well. Australia, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, EU, Singapore. No longer us.
All
no longer us.
Losers.
So it's not everything, but it's a beginning of something. It's the beginning of like a real problem, a real debt pile with not even a plan to stop it increasing. Not just to not pay it, but to stop it from increasing. And it's pretty wild to not be AAA when you are the world reserve currency. That gives you such a stretch amount of room. When you're the world reserve currency, you can kind of print a little bit. You know, because the inflation that would normally happen is distributed across everyone.
Yeah.
So you get a little bit of wiggle room. So it's an exorbitant privilege. So to have the greatest advantage and to not be creditworthy is crazy. We are still the world reserve currency, yes. I may have been understanding what you said earlier, but we're not going to feel the effects of the increased deficit from the bill if it would have went through during Trump's presidency. No, what I was trying to say is Trump's bill proposed a bunch of spending increases and tax decreases. So things like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and then tons of no taxes for the rich that were extended from his previous cuts. To balance that, to make that math seem to be okay, it proposed a bunch of things that would save money. But all of the things it proposed to save money didn't kick in until after he was leaving the presidency. So it was all the juicy stuff now, which is like tax cuts, more spending. And then all the pain, all the, like the hard part later. And so the idea was like, okay, I do all the good stuff now, and then whoever's next can deal with the problems. And that's when, of course, people get mad at it. You really want them to be balanced so that people feel both effects. I'm not bringing this up. House Republicans brought this up and said, hey, it doesn't make any sense. And by the way, you know, this is not just the Trump thing. Trump is, if anything, a symptom of this long-running problem. But Moody's mentioned this in their announcement. They said, first of all, this is a long time coming. And they thought about it very seriously because they know how important it is. And they finally had to do it. They had to make this downgrade. And they said it's a result of decades of fiscal mismanagement from including, but not only limited to Donald Trump, okay? And so we're now sowing after the reaping. We're reaping what we sowed. We're reaping what we sowed. Deport Moody's, dude, it's funny you bring that up because that was the response from the White House representative, which was like, not deport Moody's, but it was like the agenda out of Moody's. This is a biased. Yeah, Moody's went woke. If the U.S. turned course,
the stock market's gonna be significantly down tomorrow because of this downgrade. I don't know how much the credit worthiness of the U.S. would affect our stock market at this point. I don't know where our stock market even is at this point. I don't know how much of it is even based in reality anymore versus how much people are just waiting for everything to go away and like we're just going to wake up from this horrible nightmare of whatever the fuck is that. I have no idea.
How long would it take to get AAA back? I don't think long at all. Immediately after downgrading, you could get AAA back relatively easy if you proposed a serious plan to balance the budget. But until anyone does that, and no one is, because it entails some short-term pain that no one is willing to, it's politically disastrous. But the problems only get bigger. Listen, as interest eats up a bigger and bigger chunk of our government, services degrade, dude. Healthcare degrades. Even you may not care about this. I don't care about much of this. But the military degrades. All the things we're spending money on go to more and more to interest payments. It used to be a tiny chunk. Now it's 1/5. Then it'll be 1/4. Then, you know, it's like that is the problem. That is, I think, when you talk about budgets or national debt, everyone goes, I don't know what that means. Who cares? And that's the real world impact. Is that we're not only not paying it, we can't even afford the interest payments. You keep saying short-term terrible, but doesn't everyone understand it's unsustainable, or is it just common man like you higher taxes? Well, I mean, listen, it's hard to ask. Listen, I don't want common man taxes to be raised. It's hard to ask the common person who's already suffering from this to bear more of the tax burden to pay the debts that previous administration, you know, that's not what I'm asking. But I think what I try to do is like to put in real terms the impact of this insane overspending on our generation and future generations. It makes the problem bigger and bigger. It's just a kicking of the...
How big is Atrioc as a streamer on Twitch? Is he like a 5-figure, like 10,000 plus, or? It's kind of funny that he's kind of like not even remotely involved in the political warrings of Hassan and Asmongold, although he doesn't really do politics per se. It's more kind of like finance focused. He's a big 4-figure streamer? Okay. Good for him.
That has now gotten so massive. How have we not cut military yet, bro? I don't get why we don't get... Listen, Linkus, your brother works in the Swedish military, right? He told me if I ever went to Sweden, I could drive in a Swedish tank. Why doesn't he hook us up with some cheap Swedish tanks? We could save billions if your bro gives America some cheap Swedish tanks. That's the hook. That's the connect. America just needs to give the correct person God mode for a decade and let them fix everything. Better be real careful with the correct person part. So many times in history, people have done exactly what you just said. To absolute disaster. The only good example I can think of this is like Lee Kuan Yew, who's like the closest to... Have you seen the Lee Kuan Yew fan
What's that
cam?
name?
Whoever governs Singapore must have that iron in him, or give it up. This is not a game of cards. This is your life and mine. This was a mud flat, swamp. Today, this is our modern city. 10 years from now, this will be a metropolis.
Jesus.
But many, and again, there's problems in Singapore too, don't get me wrong, but at least their standard of living increased. But many times when standard of living doesn't even increase, it just goes to the guy you gave God mode and his friends and family and cohorts and party. And they fucking suck the country dry. No, they don't. not like that.
Based. Have you ever been to Singapore? Nope. Something your mom's Singapore though. Got him. 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 George Noah Sampson's response to Ethan. We watched some of it. I think I agree with Noah. I don't think Ethan has a good case for defamation there. Free Palestine protest was super unhinged people. Action Man, who was his Jewish father, went there for context. Do we hate? I feel like I hate Action Man. Do we? Was this guy threatening to kill me in Israel or something? Or am I thinking of Johnny Somali?
Well, I'm sure he would.
Jesus. I think I'm thinking of Johnny Somali. Action Man is your friend. Okay. Hold on one sec. These microprocessors, I think, these are the last things I have to automate, and then we're done with building anything, right? Then I just have to build a ship and fly to the end of the universe, and then we're done.
Our next round is ongoing, but it is a promise that it will one day end.
Dude, these guys are not real people.
Fathers, sons, and daughters, we will honor all our martyrs. Take you up.
For what? I got a call after this week. I got a call after today.
This is what we have seen live streamed on television for the last 18 months, for the last 19 months. In Gaza, in Palestine, in Lebanon, all across the region, with attacks on the movement here, and not least of which in Sudan.
Oh, you linked me a whole ass 11-hour video. Do I care about this? Johnny Somali is facing a max sentence of 35 years. Most likely it will be much lower, but the chance he will get prison sentence is like 80%. Yeah, I saw that. Rip. But I mean, he's also been like insanely disrespectful and like just crazy with everything that he's doing with his. He's just been unhinged. I don't know, man. It requires a certain type of bravery / stupidity to be that unhinged in a foreign country, I think. But. I gone off on DMAC. I'll probably read it or go over it tomorrow. The Pangburn guy got really fucked, and so did you if you bought anything though, because they had all the information and they signed the contract, and then they decided to pull out, which is pretty. I think I would say shitty to anybody that bought a ticket or signed up, but I might go over it a little bit tomorrow. Focus group on Vance's popularity.
Lots of people know JD Vance's story and feel, and so when I was listening to the people who like him, I was interested in how many people sort of mentioned that as the route by which they felt like they knew him and could gauge his authenticity. Because I think for people who come to him cold, they don't find him authentic.
There were some funny videos going around when he was picked as VP of like people in their living room scrolling through Netflix, and the movie went back on Netflix when he was picked. And it was people realizing that the guy in the movie was the same guy who was vice president now, and they were all sort of incredulous, like they couldn't believe. They're like, oh, it must be a different JD Vance, you know?
Wait, what movie was JD Vance in? I have no fucking idea. I didn't even know he was in a movie. Hillbilly Elegy. I thought that was just a book that he wrote. Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Focus Group podcast. I'm Sarah Longwell, publisher of The Bulwark, and this week
You read a book and
we're
made it
covering
into a movie.
JD
Gotcha.
Vance's first few months in the vice presidency. We haven't talked about him much yet. Since Vance joined the ticket, it's been clear that he's indicative of the new right populist strain of thinking in the GOP that is a lot more purchased right now than my, John McCain, Mitt Romney wing, RIP.
They're dead.
So I want to learn as much as I can about Vance's influence at the moment, the new right's influence more broadly, and what it all means for where the Trump administration is taking us. We're bringing back a former guest who's been a singularly dogged and insightful chronicler of Vance and the new right, Ian Ward, reporter at Politico and Politico Magazine. What's up, Ian? Thanks for coming back.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
So we've been asking about Vance in the groups and getting a lot of feedback from the voters. And so I was interested. You were so good on the last show. You knew so much about this stuff, the new right, which I think, and our listeners were really interested in it. And I think even now watching Vance in this role and the obvious question of, is this guy Trump's successor? I think opens up new relevance to discussion of the ascendancy of the new right and what that means for our politics. So besides the obvious, which is like Ukraine, tariffs, what other footprints have the new right had on the second Trump term that our listeners might not grok?
Yeah, I think tariffs would jump out as an enormous one. I think it's hard in retrospect even to think back to how remote the possibility of the current tariffs were, even during the first term, right? Trump, the first time around, was surrounded by a bunch of economic advisors who were openly free trade, openly skeptical of tariffs. Vance in the Senate was one of the few senators who was sort of vocally pro-tariff, and the case that he made for it mattered a lot too. You've seen this in the rollout of the tariffs, which is just that there are multiple competing justifications for them. One being that they're sort of a negotiating tool, the other being that they're a way to reindustrialize the country, and the possibility that you'd have sweeping tariffs used, and the justification offered for them would be that they would help reindustrialize the country was like a pipe dream, right?
Go to the people. I don't care.
We're going to Canada, the 51st state. How does the new right sort of square those things?
Yeah, the argument.
Wait, is this just a... Oh, okay. I want to hear people talk. I don't care about you two.
Post-war history of France and all this. And I asked him, why de Gaulle? And he said, ironically, that he sees himself as a kind of a unifier in the de Gaulle tradition, like a champion. He said he admired de Gaulle's cultural conservatism and also the way he positioned France in the kind of post-war Atlanticist alliance with a little bit of independence from that alliance. But also
that is wild, actually.
Yeah.
When you think about who Vance is, this is a guy who has been casual about blowing up our relationships with some of our closest allies.
Yeah, well, I think he admires that de Gaulle kept the Atlanticist thing a little bit of arm's length, managed to keep France from deindustrializing at the same rate as some of the other Western European countries. There's a lot of talk on the new right of building this sort of 60-40, 70-30 governing coalition where like they win over a big bulk of the American middle and then the traditional right voting constituencies. So they're able to build this like durable governing coalition that covers like 70% of the electorate. And I think he sees himself, he aspires to build that coalition. And I think I wrote a piece a couple of years ago about sort of revisionist takes on Richard Nixon on the right and looking to Nixon as a kind of figure, sort of proto-figure of the new right. And, we forget this because Nixon blew up so spectacularly in Watergate, but like Nixon won a massive electoral majority in 72 based on this sort of foreign policy savvy and also the culture war appeal to the middle American conservatives. And I think Vance sort of sees himself in that tradition. I really think he wants to be a kind of Nixonian 70-30 coalition builder. I think the irony is that perhaps the things he's had to do to position himself in Trump world to be successful have undermined his ability to be that type of unifying figure, right? Like he's proved to be very divisive, but I think like in his heart, he aspires to be this kind of the creator of the 70-30 conservative durable governing majority. I don't know if that'll be possible, but that's my sense of it.
That's interesting. Okay, well, let's get into some of the people who would need to be part of that 70% coalition. The first group of people that we're going to listen to, we've been asking a lot of different types of groups about Vance, and so we're going to play a bunch of them. But these first ones are going to be the 2024 Trump voters who disapprove of Trump at the moment. So we talked with these folks for the Dave Weigel pod we did last week. But this is specifically the section where they talked about Vance. So these people who voted for Trump but aren't feeling great about him at the moment. Let's listen.
Okay.
He's just a creepy little man. The comments he had to say about women prior to his election, I don't understand. I think like my problem with the right is there being so much like the world I came from, which is the repressive Middle Eastern world that is so stuck on religion and gender roles. It just kills me. So I don't know. I think the commentary that comes out of his mouth about those things, and I forget the specifics, but, quite insulting. I think just all of that, he doesn't seem like, I don't know. He doesn't represent the whole country, right? He's too conservative for me, honestly.
He's just like very awkward. I remember seeing clips of him saying like, I will never be a Trump supporter. And now he's his VP, which tells a lot about his character. Very flip-floppy, doesn't really stay true to his words. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
When they were having like the vice president debates, I thought he was very well spoken. I mean, he was calm, he was level-headed. And then once he got in here, he's kind of changed. And it just seems like he's Trump's little yes man. And that he don't really have his own opinion. He just kind of, whatever they say, he's going to go with and do. So my opinions kind of went downhill on him since they got elected.
Damn.
I'm glad someone brought up the vice presidential debates. Like, I mean, compared to Tim Walz, I was like, oh, which one is worse, right? So I was like, okay, fine.
I need a comedian like Trump.
On the same ticket, then fine, so be it. But yes, I feel like he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. The flip-flops, I thought he made a good speech at the UN, like right when the administration took over, and then it sort of just got a little bit strange. Again, very beholden to whoever funds him, and I feel like he's just ready to pounce if anything, God forbid, should happen to the president. I feel like it would not be great for him to step into that role.
I mean, I feel that Elon Musk is more of a vice president, I guess. I mean, not that we want him to be, but it seems like the focus is more on Elon than it is him being the vice president. I mean, that's just how I feel. So I honestly haven't followed him too much to have much more of an idea.
As someone else said, I think that Elon Musk is more of a vice president than he is. And it shouldn't be that way, but that's how it is. I think he's kind of ineffective. He talks too much, does too little.
Oof.
I just think he talks a lot and he goes with whatever benefits him. So whatever Trump says, he's going to agree with. If Trump says the opposite, he's going to agree with. He just has to keep himself up there by agreeing with whatever anyone says.
During the debates, he was very articulate, very charming, in my opinion. Then things started switching, changing as time went on. I didn't like when President Zelensky was there and President Trump and Vice President Vance kind of sandbagged Mr. Zelensky. I found that very distasteful, and it turned me off big time. He was very unprofessional.
So this group really ripped him. Like, there were other groups, and we'll listen to them, where, people have a more favorable thing on him, but I can't quite tell how much of it is that Vance gives off regular politician vibes, which voters are like very attuned to, especially on the right. It's one of Trump's big assets that they don't view him as a regular politician. They also view Trump as somebody who kind of transcends partisan politics, whereas they see Vance as very conservative, which I think people, because of the terms that people throw around, like far right or very conservative, that is not how you'd actually describe Trump. Trump is not that at all. And so people tend to think of Trump as sort of a social moderate in a way that Vance, they don't give him that credit. But what do you make of his sort of first few months here as vice president? Because vice president's a terrible job. But it seems like it's not helping him much. Like, even people either didn't like him from the jump, or they liked him and have subsequently stopped liking him during his vice presidency.
Yeah, I mean, I think the gamble he's made is that his path forward runs through, subordinating himself to Trump, right?
It sounded like his brain was lagging. Like he was having a brain lag.
And I think you see this in his rhetoric very clearly, that he doesn't want to break in any respect from Trump. Like the guy who said he's a bit of a yes man is picking up on something real, which is, I just think, he premises so many of his statements with the view of the president is, or the president believes, even when he's sort of ventriloquizing what he actually believes. And, I think that's like a rational political instinct, right? You don't want to break with the president. But it was sort of interesting to listen to the comments, because you hear people dinging him for that, right? That he's not independent. He's not standing up. He's sort of sycophantic, which runs a little bit contrary to the kind of conventional political thinking about it. And again, as you said, it's a way that Trump never had to do this, right? Trump didn't come up through the cursus honorum of Republican politics, so he never had to be in a subordinate position. Like, Vance, voters are seeing Vance do what vice presidents have to do, which is sort of kowtow to the president and fall in line. And that's coded as kind of conventional political behavior.
As a weak
I
man.
think the gamble might be that once Trump is out of the picture, he can sort of distinguish himself, and voters will kind of forget their initial impressions of him as a bit of a yes man. But it was notable to me that like several of the people you talked to criticized him for not distinguishing himself enough. Because you'd think, there's such a cult of personality around Trump, you'd think Trump voters would like someone who kind of marches to the beat of Trump's drum, but clearly they don't like that. So that was at least notable to me.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's tough when I listen to voters. I am trying to listen for when they give a reason for something. I wonder how much of it is like, I just don't like this person and I need to give a reason why, versus like, is that the real reason?
Mm-hmm.
And to me,
like, I actually don't think voters would care that much if you were a yes man to Trump, but it's only impressive if you're a yes man. If you, it's only impressive if you're a yes man. If you could be a no man, if that makes sense. Like if there was some dude who was like, I'm a virgin and I'm like 35 years old and you're like super wealthy, shredded, 6'4", like very attractive or whatever, like a woman might be like, damn, this guy's got a lot of options. He's saving himself. What a fucking giga chad. But if you're like a fucking incel and you're 35 and you're like, I have never had sex before. It's like, okay, yeah, because you can't, bro, unless you rape somebody. Okay, good for you. Like there's a, like having somebody who would back Trump or even fight with Trump, I think matters a lot more if they have the charisma to carry themselves as an individual. If you come off as like a weak yes man, nobody's gonna like you. Like you just seem like a loser, which I think Vance kind of has that issue. He doesn't have the charisma, I think, of Trump to do any kind of politicking with the MAGA crowd.
It's sort of what matters the most is that he does not engender like automatic, not just I don't want to say like interest, but like since I've been asking people about JD Vance, there are a lot of people who just at a gut level do not like him. And they don't like him in a way that where like people either hate Trump, but they're like, they can still accommodate it because of his policies, or they sort of like, they know they have to say they don't like him, or they know they have to say he's bad on a bunch of things. They disagree with a bunch of things, but like deep down, they think he's kind of funny and they like watching him mess with everyone. And so like, they do sort of like him. Whereas with JD Vance, what I read off of a lot of voters is just, I don't like this guy. He sucks.
Yeah. I think I heard this from a bunch of people who know Vance during the campaign, which was during the first couple of weeks that they were deploying him, there was like despondency among people who knew him. Like they are misusing him, right? Like they have not understood where his political strengths lie, and they're relying him on for the things he's not good at politically, right? Like I wrote this in a column when he was picked. Like anger and like righteous indignation and the kind of Trumpian bluster like does not come easily to him. On the Stump, he sort of struggles to summon up this kind of like Trumpian anger, right? He's just not good at it, and it comes across
cringe. He's cringe.
Yeah, it comes across as very forced, and he is good at sort of like explaining Trump's policies in a way that make them sound not crazy, and making them sound coherent and rational. And like they weren't deploying him to do that really until the debate. And I think you saw when you heard some of this from the people you talked to, like the debate really showed a side of him that the campaign hadn't capitalized on before, and then they used him more in that respect after that. And that's how they deployed him in the early days of the administration. Sending him to Munich, sending him to various Silicon Valley conferences to kind of stitch the whole policy agenda into a coherent thing. But, the fact that they deployed him as kind of attack dog in the first days of the administration, or in the first days of the campaign, rather, I think like rubbed a lot of voters the wrong way. And I was hearing a lot of consternation from conservatives who know him that like this is a very bad introduction for him because they're misdeploying him.
Consternation.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, actually. Yeah. All right, folks, quick time out. If you've ever tried streaming a game from abroad only to get hit with the dreaded not available in your region screen.
Streaming a game?
Tried streaming a game from abroad only to get
they mean like a sports ball game. I thought I was getting an ad that was relevant to me for once. Fuck you.
Hit with the dreaded not available in your region screen. You know how frustrating that can be. But there is a workaround. Surfshark VPN. If you're tired of feeling like you're being followed around the web, Surfshark VPN's got you. It masks your real IP address, and by doing this, it hides your online activity, encrypts your data, and blocks creepy trackers. I felt so much safer online since I started using it. Plus, when I travel, or pretend I am to get better streaming options, I just change my virtual location. Boom! I'm watching shows from around the world like I'm sitting on my couch back home. And guess what? One subscription covers unlimited devices. Your phone, your laptop, your tablet, your smart TV, Surfshark's got them all covered. You can check out Surfshark Alert, too. It warns you if your email or passwords are part of a data breach. It's like a digital immune system for your identity. Secure your privacy with Surfshark. Go to surfshark.com/thefocusgroup or use code THEFOCUSGROUP for 4 extra months of Surfshark. That's surfshark.com/thefocus group or code thefocusgroup for 4 extra months.
Okay.
The URL is also in the show notes. Go check them out. And they
Thank
have
you.
a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee.
Will do.
So no risk, just secure browsing. One
Awesome.
of the things that is my least favorite, personally, about JD Vance,
What?
is his comfort with ignoring court orders. And that was his advice to Trump when he was a Senate candidate back in 2021. Just ignore the courts, Mr. President. Or Trump wasn't president then. But just ignore the courts. And now that the administration is stonewalling the Supreme Court and may give them, just the full-on middle finger eventually, Vance has been out there he's one of the big proponents of that. Like, why should we do that? He shitposts about it on Twitter and gets in fights with like John Favreau or Tim Miller. And so like the authoritarian impulses do feel like one of his fingerprints on the administration to me. And you've written about it. Like, what's his intellectual justification for ignoring the courts?
Yeah, I got this out of him. I'm sort of proud of this as a reporting accomplishment. Back when I interviewed him in 2023, I asked him just to explain this to me. And he said he sees he said it's easy to look at someone saying you should ignore the courts as a constitutional crisis. And he says what the real constitutional crisis is the court stepping in and usurping the prerogative of the executive, right? The example he gave was with firing civil servants. And he says if the court steps in and says the chief executive can't control the executive branch, and that means personnel and hiring and firing and all that. He says that's the constitutional crisis, right? Which is you have a breach of the separation of powers. You have the Article 3 judicial branch usurping Article 2 powers from the executive. And I'm not encouraging a constitutional crisis by counseling the executive to ignore the courts. I'm recognizing a constitutional crisis that's already happening. That's his justification for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, he is a Yale-trained lawyer. Is that where he went to Yale Law?
Yeah, Yale Law.
And that sounds insane. Like, I don't that doesn't even scratch the sniff test. It's just like, okay, well, I think this and therefore I can ignore the courts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think there is a long conservative tradition of
being based
in the conservative legal movement of challenging like these independent agencies, right? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Fed, if you go back further. And I think he's like appealing to that tradition of argument that, this is the unitary executive theory, so on and so forth. Just that the executive should have total authority
to
over
do whatever the fuck
any
they want.
entity within the executive branch,
But that's not the courts.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I see what you're saying, that the courts can't step in and stop him. That has been the function of the courts, though, for as long. This is sort of basic U.S. civics, checks and balances. There are 3 branches of government.
Who cares?
You saw this in some of the judicial opinions that have come down, that even for those who would say—
More focus group.
Kind of bureaucratic managerialism of democracy.
They were still very mixed, but many of them had positive things to say. Interesting to me, because these are people who went Biden-Trump, and those were people who went Trump. Those were Trumpers the first time. They were just frustrated with Trump's first 110 days. And they were super negative. But the Biden to Trump voters were actually a little, they were still very mixed, but many of them had positive things to say. Let's listen.
And he's doing exactly what the vice president should be doing. Trump sends him, go over here, talk to this guy, do this, whatever. He hasn't really signed him a real job as of yet, whereas Biden has signed Kamala Harris the border, and we've seen how that went. Right, so I guess
to
he
fix
could get
the
an
whole
if they
border,
assign him a job. But as of right now, he's just basically telling
holy shit! If you don't have any responsibilities, you can't fuck anything up. Absolutely, Bezed.
Go talk to this guy, do this, shake this hand, go to Greenland, go here. He's been doing what you're supposed to do as a quote unquote right hand man.
Just fucking
well,
nothing.
I'm glad that they chose somebody that's actually a millennial for vice president. That was a welcome change.
Wait, do we know this person? Who's talking? Wait.
They chose somebody that's actually a millennial for vice president. That was a welcome change. He seems to have dealt with a lot of adversity, considering his mom was addicted to narcotics when he was growing up. And he's pretty articulate. I think that's also what helped Trump win independence. Because I watched the News Nation town hall with him a couple of weeks before the election. He was pretty on point.
I think that he is so kind. I think that he's beautiful with his family. I like his background story. It's very similar to my own. He understands what America is sometimes, and he wants to do better and help be better. And he worked to make himself better and give himself a better future. So I really like him.
He's extremely articulate. He is very poised. He isn't just a talking head who just spouts off the same ideas over and over again. He actively listens to people when they're asking him questions. And also when he's been kind of attacked, his way of debating is always very intelligent. I feel like he knows what he's talking about. He doesn't go into any sort of meeting without already knowing how to approach a situation. He's a lot more level-headed than Trump is, so that's kind of a nice thing. But I do believe that he believes in the same things about making America great again as Trump does, but he does it on much more, if I were to say, professional level. I like his demeanor.
To me, he seems down to earth. I watched the movie that they had out about him, and he seemed just like a small town boy who, had it rough, wasn't born into politics, which I like. I like the way he speaks. I mean, that's about it. I mean, he's the vice president, so there's only so much I guess he's going to do in the 4 years.
Towards the end, both he and Trump went on a lot of podcasts, and they did a lot of long format, just having conversations. And I don't remember every detail about, his life, but he just seemed genuine. And that's a lot of the reason that I voted the way I did, is because I think that authenticity is important. Obviously, the signal thing, he was involved in that. And a lot of the messages were him talking about, bailing out Europe or whatnot. And that spoke to his character. It was in line with what he says in public, was what he was saying in private. And when Zelensky was in the office and they had that spat, he stood up. He was patriotic, America first, come in here with respect. Some people thought that was, kind of scary, but I was like, nah, coming to the White House, asking for a favor, show some respect. And I appreciate him speaking up and saying that.
Wow. And, he's been totally involved in, that's totally unlike a lot of vice presidents that you don't ever see them do hardly anything, like Kamala Harris, I'm sure she's a nice person and everything, but I think she's an ineffective leader. But I think J.D. Vance has what it takes.
He's kind of overshadowed, but I think that's to be expected. But I feel like he's definitely being poised to be like the next candidate. So I'm curious to see in the coming years how he's going to kind of differentiate himself, or is he just going to continue to ride the Trump's coattails and how that plays out. So I think he'll play a bigger role in the future. I do like the guy. I think he's relatable. He's young, which is nice. And I like him, but yeah, I'd have to give him a B minus.
One of the things, we kind of touched on this before, that I think is under-discussed about Vance is that his Yale law pedigree allows him to speak the language of elites and be comfortable defending Trump on, say, like a New York Times podcast in a way that Trump himself and many of Republican electeds are not comfortable. Is Vance's ability to do that kind of code switching, or if you're Tim Walz, code talking, is his ability to do that, is that what the administration wants from him? And also,
no, because why are they trying to appeal to those people anyway? Come on.
Well, I've got two different questions. One, and you kind of answered this, but
more
on
people
that side said no, we're going to keep things scripted. We are not going to go but he does the freewheel and stuff. That is where he is. Like Trump, his willingness to just sit down with anybody and BS for an hour, which is what you have to be able to do now.
Yeah, I'll just single out one more aspect of his biography, which is often forgotten, which is actually featured in Hillbilly Elegy, which is when he was a Marine. He was a public affairs officer.
Yeah,
he was a PR flack for the military.
Right.
His job was to interface with journalists and to explain the war in Iraq and tell the stories of people who were fighting over there. And he says this was the first time he felt a sense of competence in his life, right? He grew up feeling very incompetent, and the first time he felt a sense of self-possession was when he was a PR flack in the army, right? So he clearly has that's in his comfort zone, interacting with the media, interacting with kind of normal people, interfacing with them. I just think it's an enduring part of his biography, so it is very interesting.
Yeah, let's listen to the voters who are Biden to Trump voters. These are still Trump voters, but they're the swingier ones, and how they talk about J.D. Vance, because they were much more meh on him.
As a vice president, he is so in his shadow, and when you take the Trump aura, you can't see him. He's invisible. So he's trying, but he's like every other. Pence didn't stand out until it was June 6th. They're there. They're partially on a plate.
June 6th or Jan 6th? Or do you mean June 6th when he entered the primary or something? Or
he hasn't jumped into anything other than he's the one that is also shaking the saber, but he's just a puppet. I don't think he's stood for anything yet that he's come out for, and he flip-flopped. Before he actually got on the ticket, he wasn't as religious, and he was against Trump. And then all of a sudden, he saw God and the light, and now he is Mr. Trump 100%. And he's religion, and women should have babies and stay at home.
You meant Juneteenth?
Okay, dude, but he's fully engrossed in the current ticket. But I think he's just a puppet.
I've just heard bad things about him, and please don't ask me to express what I've heard, because I don't remember. Just all of my friends don't like him.
Every conservative ever.
And I just got bad reviews for him. But I'm not super informed on it, so I study up on him if he was up for election.
I give him a C, like everyone else is saying. I'm not really sure what
I don't really
he's
know
doing.
fuck all about him, but I'm
he's
pretty sure I don't
supposed to
like him.
according to Trump. I do like that he always, has Trump's back. The Zelensky interview, I didn't love that, how he talked to him. So he's just kind of middle of the road for me.
I gave him a B because it's more of a B for the administration, I guess, because he's just blends into the administration. He doesn't really.
See, that's what I mean. I feel like this. I'm curious. Obviously, this is a focus group, and who knows how pervasive the thought is. But I just feel like Vance is not very visible. He's just he's like the Trump VP, Like literally, like he's Trump's vice president, and that's it.
And out, so I can't really give him an A because I don't know. He's not going above and beyond. Like I'm going to give an A to someone who's really standing out and going above and beyond. So that's why I can only give him a B, just to because he's blending in with the administration.
I just don't know anything about him. I guess I don't really dislike him. I just don't have any idea who he is.
I think during like the campaign, he was more like outspoken and more stable. So it was like Trump was like low, Trump. And then I guess like that was like a way of like balancing him out. But I don't know what he's doing. That's why I give him a C, because I don't know what he's like actually in charge of. So
Elon Musk is more the vice president. If you were to ask my opinion, that's who our VP is. So I can't.
I'm curious how, they probably said it at some point in here, how old this focus group is. It's probably pretty recent. But I feel like Elon has faded pretty quickly. But
I gave Trump a C, so I have to give the VP a D. There wasn't an F option because I feel like, you're not even really doing your job because someone else has been put in a position to do it. So that's kind of just where I am.
Because I don't really know what he's been doing.
I do feel like you have to feel pretty spited. Is that a word? For Elon Musk really did feel more like a VP to Trump than Vance did. I wonder how Vance feels about that. But
I mean, when he was campaigning,
spitting.
Yeah, I liked a lot of things that he said. I like a lot of things that he stood for. So that's why I'm kind of in the D area.
Okay, so in one of these groups, we were asking people to give him grades, which is why you hear people giving him a letter grade. And it was mostly B's and C's. And there were some of the B's in the positive sound that we heard. But, most of a lot more of them gave him C's. So that was sort of the negative thing. And I guess what jumped out to me is, so some people like him. Actually, several things jumped out to me. One is some people think he's incredibly visible, and other people think he's totally invisible. That is, to me, a signifier of how engaged people are in politics. Because if you're engaged, he's pretty visible for a VP.
I mean, like, is he? He's engaged insofar as he's like posting on social media, and he's with Trump in some of the meetings. But like, is he really that engaged? What does Vance do or comment on? He shit posts, like she said, on social media. I don't know if I really feel like I get that much. He's like an influencer. Yeah, the influencer mindset. It really is just the influencer mindset.
But the fact that they don't see him, people always do this about vice presidents. This was like the big knock on Kamala Harris that we heard. And it was actually a bit of an upside for her is that they had seen so little of her that for many people, it was like, she got a brand new introduction. And I think in some ways that helped. But there's also other people who were like, well, she didn't do anything. And that was kind of the knock. But that's a function of just being VP. But it's just, I guess, for the guy who I would say is the front runner and the heir apparent, if Trump doesn't do the third term, he doesn't have, people don't like him that much. Do you think that's the kind of thing that when he's in the driver's seat, if Trump were to get out of the way, and actually, let me preface this by asking a separate but related question, which is, do you think Trump wants to set J.D. Vance up to be the next president? Is my first question, followed by, do MAGA voters translate to J.D. Vance?
I don't know about Trump. I mean, he makes these cryptic comments that we in the media like to read really deeply into. He says, well, JD could do it, so could Marco. And then it's like, well, is he trying to pit them against each other? And like, who knows, right? I think the more relevant question is, who do the MAGA elite want to be the next vice president or the next presidential candidate? And it's very clear that is JD Vance, right? It's been clear before he was an MVP that people saw him in an almost messianic role. When I talked to Steve Bannon about him about a year ago, he
wait, who is he talking about? Voters, or is he talking about people in the party?
Translate to JD Vance.
I don't know about.
Oh, that is true. Actually, Vance was super visible in Europe when he was doing his tour, but that was a long time ago. That was months ago. No.
Trump, I mean, he makes these cryptic comments that we in the media like to read really deeply into. He says, well, JD could do it, so could Marco. And then it's like, well, is he trying to pit them against each other? And like, who knows, right? I think the more relevant question is, who do the MAGA elite want to be the next vice president or the next presidential candidate? And it's very clear that is JD Vance, right? It's been clear before he was an MVP that people saw him in an almost messianic role.
Was Vance popular before Trump picked him as vice president? He said the elites of the party. Okay.
I talked to Steve Bannon about him.
Actually, I might agree with that. Actually,
he called JD Vance the St. Paul to Trump's Jesus, right? The guy who comes in after him and spreads the gospel of MAGA to the world, right? I think a lot of MAGA elites see him in that role. But I think we talked about this last time, but that Trump is the destroyer and Vance is the builder. That is a very enduring construct within the elite MAGA world. So yeah, I think there's a lot of momentum behind him. Does it translate to the MAGA voter? I think the thing that stood out to me from that group in particular was how undefined he is, right? There's a lot of people who just don't know enough about him to have an opinion. And I think that's a very valuable currency in the political realm, right? Like the opportunity to define yourself. Even with all the visibility
valuable to be unknown
on the campaign and in the administration so far, there does seem to be a big block of voters who just, he's a big question mark for them. And, I think for all his visibility, he has been laying pretty low. I think in some respects, the intervention of Elon Musk in the first couple months of the administration was an enormous political boom for Vance because it drew fire, right? I mean, one way that a lot of presidents deploy the VP is just to draw fire away from them. That's
You
the
just be like
function.
a pain sponge. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do the difficult thing and get out of the way and absorb the political pain. And Musk served that function, which meant that Vance wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
So
he's getting to look. In fact, he's getting to look kind of presidential, not the attack dog, but the Munich speaker.
Exactly. Yeah, the Munich speaker, the elite translator. So I think the fact that he's undefined, if I were in his shoes, would be encouraging in some respects.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. I mean, I also think 4 years is an eternity, right, in the political world.
Yeah.
I go back to Nixon, right? I mean, the way that Nixon was viewed as Eisenhower's VP was nothing like the way that Nixon campaigned in '68, right? Like he had a whole life that's now the first chapter in the biographies about him as the VP, and it had almost no bearing on his. He was able to completely reinvent himself politically when he ran for president, and completely distance himself from his reputation as VP. And it's possible that the Vance camp is just betting that they'll be able to do a similar thing. Like his reputation as VP won't ultimately matter. Once Trump's out of the way, they can work to really define him differently, and they just need to do what they need to do to get him in that position for now. I think that's not an insane political gamble to make.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, I want to close on a trend we heard from time to time in these groups that's been pretty interesting. Some of the things that Vance is best known to have been, he is an internet guy. He's an online guy. And both, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Netflix, as you pointed out before, he's memeified in some ways. And let's listen to a mix of what the Trump disapprovers and the Biden to Trump voters, this is kind of everybody in, what they said about sort of the online vibes from Vance.
Firstly, I think just killed the Pope Vance is a fake Catholic. He called Pope Francis a pastor. That's not what you do.
And then the whole thing of the Pope seeing Vance as the last person before he passed away was kind of awkward and funny as well. So I agree with what most people say, that he's just very awkward and maybe even a little dishonest.
The 86
I actually was just looking for a movie to watch, and I haven't watched it yet, but his bibliography, there's a movie made. He wrote a book and it became a movie, and it has major actors in it. It came out 2020, and I didn't believe it was him at first. JD Vance was has to be a different JD Vance. There's no way. And nope, it was him, and it talked about his adversity and how he grew up in bad conditions and worked his way out of it. When I read that, I was like, that's actually cool. You were a regular person, you saw the chance and you took it and you worked to get out. And I think that's a really good concept to represent America. And he seems so far to kind of help balance Trump when Trump can get a little angry or things like that.
Honest, I haven't really followed very much about him. The only thing I really can say much about, I did watch the movie about him, The Hillbilly Elegy, so I can base an opinion on that. He's worked hard, I guess, in his life to be where he is today. I'll give him that.
I feel like during campaigning, he kind of was doing good until he started to get critiqued. There were the jokes about him on the couch and et cetera, et cetera. It's like he became a joke. So I feel like even Trump realized he became a joke. And we then said, okay, we'll throw Elon.
Not the couch
because
fucker.
Vance is sort of the first truly, because he's young, as people point out, the truly internet native person to hold either the presidency or the vice presidency. And he has the Twitter habit, to prove it. This guy is on Twitter all the time fighting with everybody, including us over here at the Bulwark. So he can see all of the couch jokes, the killed the Pope jokes, and the did you even say thank you memes that came out of the Zelensky meeting. But how do you think he's handled that? Do you think it's good for him as vice president to be kind of like a shit posting brawler on Twitter? Is that the future of somebody who's going to be the president?
Yeah, I think that one of the more relatable things about him is that he clearly spends way too much time on Twitter, which I'm sure you and I both.
It's relatable to us. I don't know about regular people without mental illnesses like we have.
He's online to the point where you can tell he understands the micro distinctions and the clicks on Twitter, right? He engages with certain accounts that you only would engage with if you really understood how the Twitter world works, which I just think is funny. It's just, and occasionally he posts these very long kind of policy memos almost in replies, which is an insane way to conduct sometimes foreign policy, sometimes domestic policy.
Yeah, you do it on Signal like a normal person.
Yeah, exactly. I think you kind of have to be memeable to be president. Yeah, to answer your question. Trump is AI memed all the time. The way he uses Twitter and online generally is sort of bizarre and interesting. He posted a video of himself making biscuits on Thanksgiving, I think, which it was just I don't know what to make of it. It was an attempt to be relatable. I think it's sort of a little bit tongue in cheek, right? He knows that, there were those memes going around of him as kind of overweight, wearing the spinny rainbow hat. You know what I'm talking about? The Tweedledee Tweedledum.
Yeah, I know what the hat is. I'm not sure I saw the meme.
Yeah, I think you want to be memeable, right? You want to be a subject of internet culture if you want to be president. Because as you said before, the way that
I didn't
in
see
this
this
world
meme,
we live
did
in,
I?
where politics is in some respects upstream of culture, the way to have political cachet is to have cultural cachet, and that includes being an AI meme or being, a GIF or whatnot. So
even if it's a wholly made up but persistent thing that you somehow have sexual relations with the couch. I don't know.
I don't know how much that's persisted. Maybe it defined him in some respects early on. I don't know. The memes of him. Sort of overweight with
that
a big
hat
face.
thing.
I think
Never
become
mind.
more
I know what you're talking
ubiquitous
about.
from my own Twitter dwelling, but I'm not an expert on these things. So
you're right though that some of that stuff has gone away. It's good. It was was quite stupid and certainly untrue.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of lighthearted. You know, he posts. He's a poster, right? Like when he broke there was the video going around of him breaking the college football championship statue, and then he made a joke about it.
He did.
You know, or when it came out that Ohio State was going to be in the final on the night of inauguration, he said like, "Should I go?" You know, he's a digital native, and he engages in Twitter in a way that I think like not all politicians do. So you know, I think there's maybe some strength in there. I don't know how decisive it'll be, but he clearly knows his way around those corners of the internet.
Yeah, I think it is a sickness that is still somehow in the new media environment an asset.
Yeah, I mean, the ironic thing, just to wrap it up, is like there's a very strong critique of the way that communications technology has screwed up the modern world on the new right. You know, like poisoned our brains, and yet all these people seem like maximally poisoned by communications technology. You know, so you wonder like, well, if they are such vociferous critics of it, why do they succumb to it so easily? And is it a refracted self-critique? Not to get too Freudian about it, but like, are they projecting their own insecurities about the ways that technology has screwed with their own brains into the kind of cultural and political sphere?
Oh, to take that further, or their own guilt, as many of them have built. You know, I mean, this is where the tech titans now live on the new right. I mean, you know, it's like either we're going to be a monarchical society or we're going to go seasteading, you know, with Peter Thiel or whatever, and we're all going to get blood transfusions to stay young forever. Like, I don't know, these guys. It has been striking to me, and increasingly so, how much of our cultural life now is dominated by people who do seem sort of broken by the internet or have built, like when I see Zuckerberg saying, well, we're going to give people AI friends because most people want to have more friends and they don't have them. And I'm like, the sadness of Mark Zuckerberg at being a friendless dude is leading us to like ruin as everybody, you know, stops interfacing with real people and is just going to have robot friends.
I do think it's a challenge for the left, which is that as the right and the new right in particular have appropriated these arguments that were once lefty arguments, right? Like a critique of communications technologies, the way it's alienated us from the world, right? That's a critique that was pioneered on the left, which has now become the right. And it's challenging for the left not to become reflexively opposed to that, right? Like, I think a lot of people feel that their relationship with the world is screwed up by technology. And, you know, we don't want to go through our lives staring at our phones constantly. It's not a good way to live. And like, if that becomes the exclusive purview of the right, and it's not a thing that people on the left speak to authentically, I think that's a big problem when you're talking about the type of voters you're
coming for
AIGS
guys. These guys are.
The right has appropriated critiques of the left, and now you see a kind of prickliness on the left towards those arguments. But like, those were arguments the left did make and probably should still be making. It's just a bizarre dynamic of the realignment, I think.
Yeah, it's not just the narratives of the left; it's the policies. Some of the you know, tariffs. I mean, I just point this out all the time. Trump, Elon, RFK, Tulsi. I don't know, Joe Rogan. They were all Democrats like 10 years ago, and so they've brought a bunch of, but they were irresponsible, and so they've brought some things that sort of were fringe lefty or had been gone by the wayside from the mainstream left, and they've brought it over to the Republican Party, and the Republicans, despite everything I was taught coming up in the conservative movement, were basically like, oh yeah, let's do protectionism, let's do price controls, let's forget the free market, let's ban all the trans fats and the whatever. These are just in vaccines too; those are bad. Like, all this stuff, not none of it, but much of it is new to the mainstream Republican movement, which I think it's a good place to leave it on the fact that I think it is what is interesting to me about Vance more than anything else is that he does have a coherent view of what he would like to do in a way that voters have been like a real kind of weird salad of all kinds of stuff. And there's been a lot of political realignment, and Trump has a political project kind of, and America First is less a project as it is more of like it's a presentation of priorities. It's like a way we're going to orient and prioritize things. Whereas Vance has like a real ideological project he wants to execute,
which is way spookier.
And I suspect that the deep ideological project might be actually less appealing to voters than the charismatic, above politics, burn it all down approach of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think he is proving to be politically savvier than a lot of people anticipated.
Really?
I guess we'll
see.
You kind of underestimate him at your own risk, I think.
I am underestimating him actively right now.
Has surprised a lot of people, even within the MAGA coalition, who I think were initially skeptical of him. He surprised a lot of people with how savvy he is, both sort of in the blocking and tackling of politics and the ideological and messaging side of it. So he hasn't really dropped the ball enormously yet. 4 years is a long time, but he has a lot of runway ahead of him, I think.
Well, I mean, he did do the whole eating dogs and cats things. But yes, didn't seem to go against him. So, Ian Ward, thank you so much for coming back. And thanks to all of you for listening to another episode of Focus Group Podcast. We'll be back next week. But in the meantime, remember to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to The Bulwark on YouTube, and become a Bulwark Plus member at thebulwark.com. We will see you next week, guys.
Wow, thanks. I don't know how to fucking... Fuck! I need to get chips out of here. These have 5 inputs and they need the heat pipes. It's fucking annoying. Or what if I should just abandon the beacons at all? I'll figure it out. Okay, tomorrow we build the ship. Or I think I just need railguns and we build the ship and then we fly to the edge of the universe and I'm done with this fucking game, okay? Alright. I'm sorry I've been socializing more. I love you though. Be careful. I'll be back tomorrow. Stay safe. I promise. Maybe I'll stream more tonight. We'll see, okay? Maybe. Be careful. Give us connections at least. Almost, athletic, open, close, warm, flexible, excellent, exercise, area, drill, 1 game, easy, assignment, not quite, and lesson. Almost, close, not quite. Game, excellent, exercise, warm, athletic, open, easy. Oh, wait, fuck. Wait, really? It's warm. Like you're close? You can be athletic, you can be flexible, you can be... Never mind. A drill, assignment, exercise, a game, lesson, practice things. Games can be for practice, right? Oh no, come on. We're gonna do an exercise, we're gonna do a drill, we're gonna do a lesson, we're gonna do a game, an assignment, I guess it could be. Name for homework? Whatever, okay. Tasks for a student, okay. Oh, this is so easy. Like, oh yeah, I'm easy, I'm flexible, I'm open, I'm game for whatever. Area, athletic, 1, excellent. What A might mean. Oh my God. A for athletic? In what circumstance? Oakland A's? Triple A? YMCA? It stands for association, no?